Hey friends, welcome back to the Alternatives Podcast. So good to have you all here. I am really looking forward to today's episode. We have a very relevant topic and a special guest. We're going to be talking about social media. And I think this is something that we can all learn a little bit more about, and how do we do that kindly and graciously, and do we need boundaries? So I'm really excited for that. Our guest today is Cody Vermillion, a friend of ours. He is the co-founder of a really cool organization called Uncommon Good. Cody, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so currently the co-founder of Uncommon Good, as you said, and that we're a nonprofit organization that tries to connect people in the community with faith conversations. And, it's kind of like church for people that don't like church. We're a church-ish organization. And so that's been really fun. Before that, though, I managed social media for various organizations and churches, and some personal pages of my own. And my wife's got a podcast, and so manage a lot of that. And then and I'm also a father of two, and it's awesome. And we're doing homeschooling, which is part of what I was doing this morning. And I consider myself a more creative person. So music, graphic design, art, I do some website stuff, do some of the technical aspects. I do a lot of that for Uncommon Good.
Okay, so why is this something that you're so passionate about?
Well, I think that when social media began, there's been many forms of social media throughout the decades now, but it was about connecting with people. And so I look at what's going on right now and the way social media is being used, and there are some very good ways in which it's being used. A lot of people want to talk about the negative ways. I actually really love social media. I love the tools that it offers for our nonprofit, for businesses. It's crucial for connecting with audiences, for building a brand, that kind of thing. But social media was originally designed for connection with people. And what it's turned into so much these days is just a space for advertisers to get your attention and people to argue. Frankly, it's become a pretty vitriolic place. I never really got into Twitter because of that. I could see early on, like, this is a weird space that I don't necessarily feel like my personality fits in with the way Twitter is. And now it's so much more, it's a dark place every time I go there. Not that there's not good happening, but and I'm passionate about talking about social media and using it for the good thing that it's used for, because there's been tons of movements that have risen up because of social media. Injustices around the world have been pointed out because we have information now kind of at our fingertips. And so somebody takes a video of something happening, even if it's across the world, we can say, oh my gosh, that's happening. We got to do something about that. And so that's the good side of it. But really, I think that the heart of it is connecting with people. And if you're not using it to connect with people, then not sure you're using it the way it's intended to be.
Yeah.
That's great. And this kind of goes into our first question a little bit, so I'll just have you expound on it. But how can it be something that helps us and hinders us? So you started that part of the conversation of the positives and the negatives, but can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah. So again, just using my using my nonprofit as an example, we wouldn't be able to exist the way that we do without social media. Social media is the way that we get the word out about everything that we're doing. We do have like email lists and stuff like that, and that's great, and it's really effective stuff. But social media is this wonderful and unique platform where you get to show your brand off and connect with your followers at the same time. It's like having almost like a portfolio gallery of who you are as an organization, while also affording you the opportunity to connect directly with the people that that are involved in your organization, that love your business, that shop with you, whatever. So those are the great things that I see for a nonprofit co-founder, a business owner, etc. And I also see, like I mentioned before, if there's, for example, a disaster in some other country, people here in the United States can say, oh, we know right away what's going on. We can use social media to mobilize donations, to relief efforts. People can say, I'm okay. Don't worry. I'm okay. Family, I'm in this country right now, and I'm going to let you know on Facebook that I'm okay, even in this disaster. And so incredible, wonderful ways in which social media has connected humanity. And so that's what I think is the benefits, right? And the fact that I can say happy birthday to my cousin and send them a funny picture, you know, it's pretty cool. But I think that the detriment that has come, the negatives, is twofold. One, I think it has become a place where there's lots of toxic pockets of vitriol and arguing and just ugliness, you know. And the fact that it has become more of a business where we are the product. You know, we're hearing that a lot lately, you know, with the Netflix special on the social dilemma and things like this, and people are talking about that a lot. We're the product, which is just us getting advertised to, which is not anything new. It's just that it didn't used to be that way, and now it is. And you know, a business has to make money. So I find that as a negative aspect as well. But I also find that people are spending more of their lives on social media, reading things on social media, looking at people who they don't know on social media, following celebrities, keeping up with the latest thing that's happening, watching silly videos, more than they're spending with the people right in front of their face. And that's why I say, if you're using social media for anything other than connecting with people, I don't think that you're using it the way it's intended to be, because I think that the time you spend on social media should result in connection with people. Not to say that I'm not judging somebody for watching a funny video. I did that this morning. You know, I was on Instagram, I watched a funny video. But I spent also time on Instagram actually connecting with people. I showed my wife the funny video, you know, so it's will it result in connection with people is the key for me.
I think that's a great delineation, and kind of to communicate that, wow, if we're not connecting with people, then what really is the purpose? And does it become wasting time, or doing things that we really don't want to be spending our time doing? So I really appreciate that perspective. Why do you think it's so easy then for people to be unkind on social media? So kind of if you carry that through, if you're connecting with people, you wouldn't think you'd want to be unkind, but talk about that a little bit.
I think it's, and there's probably tons of data on this. I think that there's, I don't know the data, I'm not a statistician or anything, but I think that there is, there's a mental barrier that goes up. You are sitting behind a screen, whether you're on the computer or you're on your phone. There is something about the fact that it almost feels anonymous. Even though you're not. You're very much not, actually. By the way, everybody, like what you say and do on the internet, it never goes away. So you're not anonymous. It feels anonymous, though. It feels like, especially if you don't actually really know the person. Let's say a family member posts something political on their page, and you go and comment on it, and they've got some friends that you don't know. They're saying things, and you disagree very much with something that person says. it's very easy to say, I don't really know this person, but I have this platform right now, and I'm just going to go off and I'm going to tell them, what I think and why they're so wrong. And I think it has to do with that fact that you feel like you're anonymous, even though you really are talking to a human being. The fact that it's a little avatar with a name next to it, it makes it mentally easier to disconnect them from their humanity. And I think that's probably the biggest problem is that we don't recognize that we're not talking to some avatar or some Facebook profile. We're talking to a human being. And so would you talk to that person face to face the way you're talking to them?
Right.
If the answer is no, you probably shouldn't say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really key. We sometimes, when we're behind the veil, we feel like, oh, I can say whatever I want, but there's can be a lot of consequences for that.
Yeah, and some of it also might be just we feel this strong conviction about something that we believe, which is a good thing. It's good to have strong convictions, it's good to have strong beliefs. But what social media does is it gives us a platform for people to see that. It's no longer something that we just hold inside our heads or our hearts and discuss with friends and family at the dinner table. These are things that we are just pushing out to the world to show the world what we think and what we believe. And that's pretty empowering. But it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah. So how can we communicate then on social media about the hard things without creating unnecessary conflict? So if we do want to connect with people in that way, and kind of start a dialogue, but we don't want it to be a big, huge conflict, what do we do?
Yeah. So I'm always still figuring that out. My approach is always check my tone. Would I say this to this person in real life? First of all. Second of all, how do I sound right now? Like if I was receiving what I'm writing right now, how would I receive it? What would I think that they mean? Would I feel attacked? What are some ways that I can soften what I'm saying? How can I be clear about what I am saying? How can I express my opinion and disagreement without dehumanizing that person? I go into painstaking editing when I'm having these kinds of conversations, and I try to avoid these conversations really on social media. I prefer to have them in person. But if there's something that somebody wants to talk to me about, or if I really feel the need to talk to somebody, I'll usually do a direct message. I won't make it public. I won't go off on the comments, I try not to. I'll usually direct message, and I'll try to be as kind and polite and aware of their humanity as possible, and try to talk to them in the ways that I would want to be talked to. And asking a lot of questions, really. You can get your point across by asking lots of questions. It's amazing. Like, well, why do you think that? Where did you hear about that? Or do you have evidence of that? Help me understand what you mean by this. There's so much that you can draw out of a person and have a great conversation if you just ask questions and stop trying to vomit your opinion on everyone.
Yeah. Well, it sounds a lot like just wanting to be respectful. You talk about, the humanity of people and all of that. And it's really about respecting each other, whether we agree or disagree, but being respectful in the conversation. And I had heard from someone previously, you can say anything you want as long as you say it respectfully. And so, that tone, that approach, we can be honest, we can say those things, but we just need to consider how we're saying it.
Yeah, it's, excuse me, it's really communication 101, right? Like, interpersonal communication, just how to not be a jerk to somebody. How would you want to be talked to, really?
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Well, what are a few questions then to ask ourselves before we engage with others on social media?
Yeah. Some of those questions that I mentioned before would be great. I think all those questions about how is what I'm saying going to be received? Am I keeping in mind people's humanity? But even going beyond discussions, because social media is not just about discussions. Sometimes you're just posting things. I would say the biggest thing is like, do I want this to be seen by everyone forever? Is this something, do I believe in what I'm posting so much right now that in 10 years, if somebody brings it up, I'm going to stand by it, and because that's happened and it's happening. So it not to dial back what you're saying out of fear of future retribution. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you're going to tackle some sort of topic or issue in what you're posting, are you gonna stand by it forever? There's unfortunately social media platforms now like to remind us of the things that we said
5 years ago.
Hey, you said this 5 years ago. You want to share it? I'm like, no, I don't want to share that. I want to delete that, actually. Because 5 years ago, Cody had different ideas of the world and different understandings of things. And so, of course, I, in certain areas of my life and my beliefs and my thinking, I've changed, I've grown, I've evolved, or whatever you want to say. And I no longer hold those views. Now, I don't delete it because it's like, well, that's who I was then. But I am a little bit more careful now about what I post, because I don't want to have those moments of social media reminding me this is what I said so long ago, and be like, I don't believe that anymore. So yeah, I'd say check yourself on that. And one of the questions I ask is, will this bring value? Will it bring value? Does it bring value to my overall social media presence? Does it bring value to someone's life? Does it bring value to my life for posting it? Do I enjoy what I'm posting? I like to be thought-provoking and joyful and positive on social media. There's enough negativity. It's not that I actually have the tendency to be a negative person in a lot of things, but there's enough negativity in the world, so I try to be positive. So yeah, those are probably a lot more than you expected, but those are the questions.
No, that's really good, because I think that requires us to, like you said, interpersonal 101, like those communication skills. It requires us to put ourselves in the other person's shoes. And especially in a culture where everybody thinks their opinion is the most important opinion. I think that is so good and so wise. And then thinking, what's that long term, 5 years down the road? Am I still going to believe this? 10 years down the road, is this going to matter? Or like, am I going to be okay with my grandma seeing this? And the way that I'm communicating and speaking and whatnot. And so those are all really good things to consider before doing that. And we can know all of the right things with social media, but sometimes it's still kind of tricky, because we sometimes maybe we're just tired, and so we'll say something, or maybe we just are like, we just need to go on social media because it's kind of like a knee-jerk reaction, like Social Dilemma, like you were talking about. They talk about like the addictiveness of it. What can we do, or are there any boundaries that we can put in place to keep us in a healthy place with social media?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love this question. And I thought long and hard about this one, because it's something I've been trying to do. Being a social media manager for my organization and previously many organizations, and I still have a bunch of pages from like bands and and creative endeavors
Like
that
the
I've
witty
done.
banters.
Yeah, the witty banters. Oh yeah. For all those of you listening, Hannah's fiance and I used to be in a band called the Witty Band. Well, we're still in the band. We never
Still in
stopped.
the band, yeah. You guys may come back sometime. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, once Corona time is over,
Yeah.
they will do a comeback tour. But yeah, so having spent a long time having to manage social media accounts and the constant notifications, pings I have to check, oh, I have to reply to this person, because it's not only like something for me to connect with people, but it's also my job. So I have to be on top of it. So I've had to create some boundaries, and it's been really like the last couple of years that I've created these boundaries. And one of the boundaries that I've done is that I've deleted all unnecessary social media from my phone. The only one that I keep is Instagram, because you can't really use it through the browser effectively.
Right.
But I don't have Facebook on my phone. I don't have Twitter on my phone. I do have TikTok as well, because that's only on the phone, but I don't use it very often because I'm old and I shouldn't be using TikTok. But I especially Facebook, it sucks you in so easily.
It does.
So what I do is I actually have a page manager app that helps me manage social media from my phone, but it doesn't allow me to go into like the news feed or the timelines or anything like that. It just allows me to manage the pages that I manage. So that's a very effective way for me to not be spending a ton of time on my phone on Facebook or Twitter. And the other thing that I do is I set app limits. And I think that most phones can do this now. You can set a limit for the amount of time that you're allowed to stay on the app. And so I set mine to an hour a day for Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. Even though I don't have Facebook because I have that page manager app, it still kind of applies to that. So those are some of the just practical boundaries, right? Just deleting things, putting some time limits on it. And then you really have to create some mental boundaries and some habitual boundaries, right? So one of the things that I do is that I try when I'm with my kids in the living room, if we're watching a show, if we're doing homeschooling, if we're eating a meal, I try to take this and put it in the room. This is my bedroom, by the way. I put it on my nightstand and I don't have it with me. If we go out to the park, unless there's some reason that I need the phone, I leave it at the apartment. We have a park at our apartment complex. Anytime that I don't need to have access to social media, I try to keep it away from me. So that's like a mental and habitual barrier. And another thing that I do on social media when I'm actually on social media, so we create the habits, the deleting apps, we set time limits, we create some physical habits of, when we're with our family, maybe we don't have our phone with us. But while you're on social media, some of the boundaries that I put in is that I say, okay, I'm not going to just go here and just scroll through infinitely and look at everything. I'm going to go find the stuff that I really care about. And so oftentimes there's a couple of friends of mine that post things often that I really like their content. So I'll go and look at that first. Or there's one lady that's commenting on a lot of the political stuff right now, but she's doing it from the perspective of a former government teacher. And she gives these like really facts-based analysis of what's happening. Plus she's also pretty funny. So I really like that. So I'll go there first as like just kind of catching up on what's going there. Bands that I like, I'll go check out what they're doing. Like I'll actually search them or I'll scroll through until I find somebody that I actually want to look at their story. I don't just mindlessly scroll through everything or let the stories pass. Just mesmerize. I try to intentionally go for the content that I care about.
Yeah.
So that's number one. And then while you're on social media, you can actually set up settings like, I want to still be friends with Aunt Sally, but I don't really like seeing her weird political posts and her weird cat memes or whatever, So I'm gonna mute her. I'm gonna mute seeing things. It's not gonna pop up in my feed anymore, or her story's not gonna come across on the top anymore. So I've gone and I've curated the content that I want to see, and not just content that I agree with. There's some accounts that I follow that I follow intentionally because I disagree with them and I want to know what they're saying. But I curate the content so that I'm only taking in a limited amount of content, because we're not, as human beings, we're not built for being connected with millions and millions of people.
Right.
Why do I care what some person that I went to first grade with is doing, what they're cooking today? Like, I don't care about that. I don't care about that is the answer. Do I want to remain connected with them if I ever want to get in touch with them? Sure. Do I want to see what they're cooking tonight? No, I don't care. So I think just being intentional about what content you consume when you go on social media.
Yeah. And I think one thing too with that, that's such a practical thing. And I think kind of similar to that, like you can't choose what you see, but you can choose who you follow. And so even before you hit that follow button, like really evaluate, is this an account that I want to see their stuff randomly? Because when you're scrolling, you have no choice. You could see something that you never intended or wanted to see. And so keeping that in mind before even saying like, yes, I want to follow this person. But I know on Facebook, that's a feature that you can still be friends with somebody, but unfollow them. And so I think that at least in some of my like friendships and relationships, I've been able to like, still be friends with them, keep the peace. But like you said, you're not seeing the political post or the memes or whatever.
Whatever it is that you don't want to see.
Yeah, exactly. Can you do that on Instagram as well?
You can mute specific people. You can mute either their posts or their stories. So I've muted a lot of people's stories because it was just hundreds of stories that I had to sift through to get to the actual stories that I wanted to see.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of muting the stories and maybe I want to see their posts, but you can choose.
Yeah.
I think about the example of this summer when tons of just things were happening over the summer, and a lot of tensions and things like that. I went and followed certain accounts to see their takes on things, and there was advice of like, oh, go follow this account to learn about this and this and that and this, and some of it was really great, and some of it was really actually kind of like stress inducing because the way that they presented the information or the way that they were talking about it, and it was like, why am I adding this stress in my life? So I actually did unfollow and mute a lot of stuff that I had been interested in just a few months ago, and so it's good to regularly do that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And as we're kind of talking through this and these boundaries, and even recognizing that this is something that some people don't care about. They want to be on Facebook or Instagram and just do whatever they want to do. And they might not think about how other people view it or how other people are feeling about it. How can we communicate with a loved one that their social media habits are hurting other people and hurting their relationships?
This is a tough one.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to remembering the person's humanity. So if they are really hurting people with what they're saying, obviously it's imperative that we say something like, you're hurting people, but we say it in such a way that protects their humanity as well.
Yeah.
We say it in such a way that we don't do to them what we think they're doing to other
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
We don't just discount or I don't know, make fun of or belittle their points of view.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think asking questions to start with, again, why are you posting such, I mean, some of the things that you're posting seems a little, I mean, kind of mean, rude, whatever you want to, whatever word you want to say. Why are you doing that? What's going on? You know, what did you mean by that? That's one of my favorite questions to ask. Tell me more about that. It's there's not really one solution for that, because I do have family members that are posting some pretty crazy things and I'm like, oh gosh, please stop. and I've brought it up kindly, and it doesn't stop. I think at some point just recognizing that maybe you can't stop it. You can't control everybody's the way that they interact, the way they choose to interact. You can keep sharing your views, you can keep loving that person and hoping for change and sharing ideas of how they could change themselves, but ultimately it's up to them.
No, that's true. And I think that's something that's such a good reminder, is we have zero control over other people's, we have zero control over anything. And I think 2020 has totally taught us that. And I know we have a lot of good stuff on here, but I know we also need to be wrapping up. How can our listeners connect with you? You have so much good stuff to say about this. Where can they learn more, or how can they, if they have a question, or where can they find you?
So my personal social media handles, where I've posted some of the things that I'm talking about here, commented on things happening in the world, is Cody J. Vermillion, at Cody J. Vermillion on Instagram, on Twitter, which I'm hardly ever on. I mean, I think the last time I tweeted was years ago, but and then Cody James Vermillion on Facebook, and what I spend most of my time with is Uncommon Good, which is what this logo is, and that's at Uncommon Good SD across all the socials, and we're posting all kinds of stuff about life and faith and being human and trying to be a source of hope and light in some dark times. And we have events that are usually limited in capacity because of COVID. And so if you're interested in going to an event, you can check us out there.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Cody. Gosh, you've had a lot of great things to say, and I just really appreciate it. I'm not a big social media person, and so I don't get involved in a lot of that, but I think it's so helpful to have those boundaries and to really set those things up and realize, regardless of how much you're on social media or not, setting those things up and protecting your relationships with each other, like what we're doing, talking today, having those conversations with people, but keep that connectedness through social media and have it be a really positive thing. So I really learned a lot. So I appreciate what you had to say.
I'm glad.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. I hope you learned a lot. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I would assume that you're on social media to some extent. So I really hope you got a lot out of it. And I know Cody shared the handle for his organization, Uncommon Good. I would really, really encourage you to check that out. They do really great things, and it's a good place of community. So make sure to check that out. We are on social media. You can find us on Facebook. We're just Alternatives Medical Clinic. And then on Instagram, we are at Alternatives MC, and we will talk to you all later.